back again to talk about the stuff you don't want to hear about. Systemic narcissism. I just saw something truly horrifying on YouTube. I haven't seen it in any of the rest of my feeds where I usually get the real mental health news around complex PTSD. This is right there. They're trying to replace complex PTSD again. They've got a new one. So I'm here to bust it out. I'm just going to keep busting this stuff out. And here's why. Let me just give you a little breakdown of why I'm doing this and where I'm coming from. I worked both in academic setting as a researcher in psychology and in the mental health industry, serving the population that is on Medicaid and Medicare or possibly nothing. Okay, so I've been all over those worlds, and I'm going to tell you kind of the education beneath the education that I got, if you're paying attention. So first of all, in the academic world, let's start with that because I mean that's what's happening. I just saw today. The important things there. Now remember, these are folks that are going ostensibly to get an education in mental health in order to help those of us who are affected. And at the end of the day, I'm going to harp away on, by and large, and that is at least 90% trauma-driven. And they don't want to go there. There's a reason for that. Because what academia really is, and I don't want to miss anything. Okay, first of all, even as a starting out student, even if you are not at the point where somebody's demanding that you publish, it is important that you come up with something fresh and new to study, something interesting, something, the fresher take, the better. And that sends students through research immediately out on wild goose chases. Anything that I can find stuff in scholarlies that people are writing about and start conflating things, I'm going to do it. I swear that this really, yes, we're talking about academics, but we're talking about frenzied academics who are being pushed into this narcissistic frenzy already of, I've got to be fresh, I've got to be new, I've got to be interesting, I've got to be the best, they've got to pay attention to me. Okay, because it goes on, and yeah, you've got to have that new shiny thing, and the further you get in academia, it is not learn to do a job to help the general good population. No, it's publish. Produce. If you want to publish and produce, what do you got to have? Something nobody else has done or not very many people are doing. You've got to start coming up with new stuff. Grants, both in the mental health world and in the academic world. Grants rule everything. You're writing grants to get your money. You're manipulating data to get your grants. I watched a professor right in front of me tell one of their grad students to take certain files out and pick out other ones to put in so that the data would be right for the NEA. A renewal of a grant. She had to make sure she had the right numbers and they weren't there, so she had to manipulate it. Okay? That's the drive. It is not for truth. It is not, and there are people out there doing it in a truthful way. Don't get me wrong. Research is valuable, and there are people out there using data and research in an honest and honorable way for the good of society. But by and large, this is what I've run into in the mental health industry. And at large, I know too many tenured professors and people who work for universities to say otherwise. You publish, or you get tenure and you're just like, yeah, well, I can do whatever I want. But still, it's got to be about me. There are very few of them that don't, at the end of the day, these days go, yeah, but it's about me. I'm the best. I'm the expert. Got tenure. Better than you. There really is that narcissistic thing running through and through, and we're brainwashing people into it. So it's all about the grants, the money, the prestige, being elite, being known, being recognized. That's the name of the game when you're in academia. Okay, so then you get into mental health industry. And no matter where you go, no matter what seat you fill in there, unless maybe a receptionist, and maybe they're getting billables too these days, but every 15 minutes with every person is a billable unit. And I had just had people who are charging my Medicare on disability a medical assistant and a doctor when I said, yeah, I know billable units. And they're like, no. I'm like, you can't fool someone who had to do that stuff. That's required with Medicare. That's required, and you have to have the right notes. It's not just, you can't just say, we did this and we treated it this way. No, there are rules, and they're hard. Medicaid even harder. I was put into a position once where I had my supervisor, and I was like, I can't, there's no note for this in here even. You've like created a new position, and now there's no note for what I did. And she literally was like, well, just say you did this. But I didn't even come close to doing that. It's all like that. It's all just a gamey thing, but every 15 minutes, with every person you see, every visit you have, is a billable unit to Medicare or Medicaid, and boy, those numbers are big. So I'll repeat, I've said this before, it is not the people who need those services who are abusing it. There are always going to be the outliers. No, it's the systems gobbling up that money as much as they can. They do not care if it runs out or not. They want it now. And they want your copay. I just had someone charge me a copay that they legally should not do, and I may never get it back. This is nasty. So know what they're up to. Now, the further of this, that book called the DSM, and all of those medications that they want to put you on, and all of those therapies. Let's talk about all of that. Number one, that DSM is full of a bunch of made up crap, and most of it is full of ways to recategorize, demonize, vilify manifestations of trauma, including one of the manifestations of trauma is poor impulse control. And most of your addictions, now there is true addiction, but it is not as pervasive as they want it to be, and it's not something that should be propping up a fake 12-step program as heavily as it is, because most of the things they're calling addiction are truly impulse control issues. I can say that because I've had them myself, and I can truly say I have a very, very, low tendency toward addiction at all, to anything. But I have had to deal with poor impulse control and binge drinking and things like that, and there's a huge difference. You got to treat them differently. That DSM is full of just made up things, like what can we call it, and then how can we manage it. Okay, so let's get to the management, because you know how many things keep getting added to that DSM if you're paying attention, and if you don't pay attention, like gazillions of new disorders get added to that every time they edit it, and it's not medical. I swear, promise. Because let's think about the treatments. Number one, let's go to the easy one. You know what they did with opioids. We all know the game, and if you don't, there's a limited series you can watch on Hulu. I think it's called Dope Sick, about the opioid crisis and about Purdue Pharma and how they did that. And basically what they kept coming in and doing is going, we've got to sell more of this. We've got to find a way to get more people on this as a solution. We've got to find a way to get more people using this. They're doing the very same thing right now with antidepressants, and they have been again for a couple of decades. And the evidence is out there saying, number one, the efficacy of a lot of data was manipulated to get those drugs on the market in the first place. Results were exaggerated, sometimes just made up. I've got scholarly articles that say so. And plenty of journal articles that you can look up about this, also saying they are largely overprescribed and actually do harm to the people who don't need them. And I'll attest to that. I do not have chronic depression. I never have. I do get into situational depression. I can identify it as such. What happened? How do I get back to my normal self? What coping skills do I use to get out of feeling this way? And it works because I don't have clinical depression. Not nearly the number of people who are on antidepressants have clinical depression. It is questionable whether those antidepressants really work long-term for that. And that's why you see the massive, constant changing of meds, add to my meds, change my meds. Tell me it's not happening all around you. All your friends aren't going, oh, I gotta change my meds, I gotta up my meds. That's brainwashing. Um, got a million different types of antidepressant and antipsychotic. We've got all these drugs. And the research is out there. The real research is saying this stuff is overprescribed. Not only is it not helping a large majority of the people that it's being given to, but it's actually doing harm. It can do harm. It can cause depression. It can cause suicidal ideation. It can also cause a change in your body chemistry at a certain point. Things like tardive dyskinesia are real, and you'll start having tics. I have friends who are going through that. I happen to have a sensitivity to pills and medications in the first place, and now it's so out of control I can hardly take anything, and I think it's because of just years of a doctor shoving every pill in me that she could. But those have real effects, and those antidepressants are strong drugs that are going for your brain. It's no joke. And it's not something you just should go, okay, I'll take it because it's going to make me feel better. Number one, it's probably not. Number two, you're just avoiding the hard work, which is what they all want you to do. They don't want you here like me going, no, I'm here to do the work. Definitely not now, and I'm seeing how much. They just go dead-eyed. I thought it was just California, but it's everybody. They're just like, oh, no. Denial. Shield. She's having feelings. Have your feelings, please. Please. We're becoming so Stepford, so creepy robot. It's really, really scary. And look at the systemic level of that. It's a narcissism that's just gone insular, and it's like, I can't deal with anything but my feels right here, and I don't really feel that much except about me. Watch people doing that in front of you. I don't know how you can't see it. So what happens in that mental, and here's the kicker, what happens in that mental health system? Oh, let's get this pill. Okay, we've got the setup, the billables. We've got to rush. You go in, you've got 15 minutes, or you've got 30, or you've got 45. There's a reason for that. I've got a new billable coming, and you can't get in the way of that because I can't charge you anymore. I've only got you for this, so I need the next one. I need my money. This isn't about you. Literally just had a doctor come in and tell me, oh, I need to get to know all about you because you're a new patient, like it was a warning, and then literally on the half hour, no, I'm backing out the door now because I've got a new patient to see and you're not my money anymore. And furthermore, you are not accepting my antidepressants no matter how hard I shove them at you, really. And that was just a family practice doctor, and I was there for a leg injury. You can't get away from it. Let's talk about the therapies. Because I am all in for a good therapist. I will say every day, a good therapist is gold. But what they are doing with therapy methods right now, I am looking and going, okay, now you are just matching up manipulations of someone's mind and behavior to match a diagnosis. I just listened to this person in real time talking about a shiny, fresh, new diagnosis that you'll see in the next, it'll make the cut in the next DSM for sure. Quiet borderline personality disorder. Quiet borderline personality disorder, which happens to cover the range of symptoms of complex PTSD that they don't have a name for yet in the DSM. They've got some leftover behaviors and symptoms here, and they're like, well, what are these? Because we still have these to deal with. Well, it looks like borderline personality disorder, which is already a misdiagnosis for complex PTSD, but it's quiet. Like they're focusing the anger toward themselves. They're focusing this inward toward themselves. That's shame. That's trauma. But we've got to call it quiet borderline personality disorder and condemn the person who's doing that instead of recognize. And the woman is even talking about how this all stems out of a family abuse and different abuses, but they're not going to call it trauma and deal with it as trauma. They're going to call it a personality disorder that you adopted because you were abused or traumatized. Think about that. So they're going to make up a diagnosis that makes you the bad guy, and then they're going to make up a treatment to manipulate it into how they want you to manifest. And that is all I'm seeing, is like you are making people uncomfortable with the way you do this, so we need to make you different. Think about that. We need to make you different. if you've had a narcissistic abuser, you know this line already. Don't tell me you don't. Because what I'm going to throw you at the end of this, all of the billables, all of the glory and prestige, the publishing, the publicity, the respect, and you go home from work and you're like, oh, every day is a different day, and you never know, and all your friends and family are going, oh, you do the best and the hardest work, you martyr. What else does a narcissist need except a fresh, new, ever-growing pool of scapegoats? They've got you right where they want you. Now you're coming in every month, doing whatever they want, twisting your brain up, going, why is this still not working? Why do I feel so confused? Unless you've settled real comfortably into, yes, doctor, therapist, I'm crazy and pitiful, and look what I do to myself, help me. You're probably going, why doesn't this feel right? You are just one of their pool of scapegoats. That's all this is. That's why there need to be more of us regular people who are experiencing this and knowing where our strength is, out here talking about it in a real way, getting around these stupid diagnoses and focusing on trauma, complex PTSD, narcissistic abuse, other types of abuse. There is an order to which people are losing at this. Women, non-binary people, black women, if we are not waking up and taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves in a healthy, holistic way, we are doing all of ourselves and all of the ones who come behind us a huge disservice. I'm looking at a niece who's going through some real hard stuff at 16 and has been for 5-6 years now. Gender identification, kid is very strong, but also very pressed by trauma, narcissistic abuse. And now subject to a mental health system that they are not at all sure of, and I'm hearing that from them. This kid has gone as far as self-harm. So this is real. This is real. And if we don't start addressing it as real and a crisis, these systems are not there to help us. They are now just like the police, who are not there to help. They're insular, self-protecting, weak, panicky, more concerned for their own comfort and safety than they are for helping you. We've got to shift this paradigm back to something human, and we have got to do it ourselves. We cannot rely on these elite, protected, entitled, degreed experts. They're experts at nothing other than getting what they want. That's it. Sorry for the bad news, but we need to wake up. Peace, loves.